This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. So if your mom is my mom, and my dad is your dad, and we're both born on October 11th, then you and I are like sisters. Sisters? Hallie, we're like twins. It's The Parent Trap, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to This Film is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. A little bit of a change of pace from Watchmen this week. Yes. We watched The Parent Trap, the 1998 Disney version. We have a lot to get to. No
Guess Who.
No Guess Who.
But we have everything else.
Okay. But we have everything else, so we're going to get right into it. If you have not read or watched The Parent Trap, the book is known as Lisa and Lottie, is what it is based on. If you have not read or watched, we are going to have a brief summary of both the book and the film.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
Lisa and Lottie follows the exploits of twin girls who have been separated since birth and meet for the first time at summer camp. They decide to switch places, with Lisa pretending to be Lottie and going to live with their mother, and Lottie pretending to be Lisa and going to live with their father. The twins are able to keep up their ruse for several weeks, in the meantime having fun getting to know their estranged parents and running into roadblocks as they pretend to be each other. When their father announces that he's going to marry a snobby woman named Irene, Lottie falls ill from stress. Meanwhile, their mother happens to see a photo of the girls taken at camp and figures out the ruse. Lisa and her mother arrive at their father's home and help nurse Lottie back to health. During this time, mother and father reconnect, causing Irene to leave in anger. Lottie recovers, the parents remarry, and everyone lives happily ever after.
All right, and if you have not seen the movie, here is the plot of The Parent Trap. In the summer of 1998, 11-year-olds Annie and Hallie attend the same summer camp where they quickly form an intense rivalry despite looking surprisingly like each other. After an escalating prank war, the two girls are sent to the isolation cabin where they begin to bond over their similarities. They discover that each has a divorced parent and that each has never met their other parent, but that they each have a picture of their missing parent. The picture reveals that they are, in fact, twins whose parents separated when they were babies and did not tell them about the other twin. In order to meet the opposite parents they grew up with, the girls hatch a plan to switch places and go home with the wrong parent. In London, Hallie, pretending to be Annie, meets her mother, the family's butler, and her grandfather. In California, Annie, pretending to be Hallie, meets her father, the family nanny Chessie, and Meredith Blake, their father's new young paramour who is only interested in Nick, who is their father, for his money. Annie calls Hallie and warns her that their dad will be marrying Meredith soon. A lot of nonsense happens, but ultimately Hallie and her mother fly to America where the whole plot is revealed to both parents, and the girls set them up on a date, hoping to rekindle their past love. The parents play along but do not intend to get back together, instead planning to figure out some sort of mutual custody situation. The girls, unsatisfied with this, refuse to tell their parents which girl is which unless they agree to take the girls camping, where they hope the parents will fall back in love. The parents agree, but at the last moment, Elizabeth, their mom, decides Meredith should go in her place. The girls spend the trip pranking Meredith until she snaps and forces Nick to choose between her or the girls. Nick obviously chooses his daughters, and Meredith leaves them. Elizabeth and Annie go back to England, but Nick and Hallie show up, and Nick and Elizabeth finally kiss, reuniting. The Parent Trap has succeeded. There you go. That's the book and the film if you have not seen either. I have quite a few questions. Let's get into them. Was that in the book?
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
What?
Honestly, don't you two read?
So as we're introduced to our two main characters in the film, they are, as I mentioned in the summary, Hallie and Annie. Hallie is the American who is living with her father, and Annie is the British girl who is living with her mother somewhere in England, London, I assume. And the Hallie and her father, though, live on a vineyard. Her father owns a vineyard. They're very wealthy, and I wanted to know if her and her dad run a vineyard together in the book.
No, they do not. In the book, her dad is a composer slash conductor, and they live in an apartment building with a bunch of other like artist types. I think both of these are fun. I don't really have a preference to one or the other. The Napa Vineyard is a great set piece. I think doing something closer to the book would have been equally as fun, though.
Yeah, I think obviously the movie's version allows for the gold digging wife or fiance storyline, whereas if he was a composer living in an apartment building, we would assume he's not very wealthy.
I mean, he's successful in the book,
right? But not like millionaire.
Yeah, wealthy. Not like Nick is successful in the movie.
Yeah. So yeah, it definitely works better for the movie's plot which we'll get to whether or not that's in the book at all. But the plot with Meredith. So then we're introduced to Annie. After we kind of get to know Hallie a little bit and her dad, we're introduced to Annie, who shows up to summer camp in a limousine with her family's butler, which I can't remember his name.
Martin, I believe is his name.
And he drops her off, and they have a very sweet relationship where he clearly cares about her very deeply, and they have this like choreographed long handshake thing that they do together. That's very cute, and I want to know if any of that relationship came from the book.
Alas, it does not. Martin is not in the book at all. But I do like the movie's decision to add him, giving Annie someone else that she's close with, kind of similar to how Hallie has Chessie.
Does Hallie's character, which I don't know which one's which one's least, because so just to clarify, obviously we got it in the summary, but the names are different.
Yes.
In the book, they are Lisa and Lottie, but in the film, they're Hallie and Annie.
Right. So Lisa is the Hallie equivalent and Lottie is the Annie equivalent.
Okay.
And I will do my best to say both names when I'm comparing.
Okay. I guess what I was asking is, does Hallie's equivalent character have the nanny? Like, does one of them in the book have like a nanny or something?
There is an equivalent character to Chessie.
Yeah.
Lisa and her father have a housekeeper named Rosa. They don't start off close though. Like it's not the same type of relationship.
Okay.
But there is kind of an equivalent character.
Okay. Once they get to the summer camp, we're introduced. They're kind of setting the stage of the summer camp, which is basically where the film opens after the intro credits sequence, which kind of sets up the backstory. We're seeing like the whole camp, and this is a little detail. It doesn't really go anywhere. It was a little gag, and I didn't realize it at first because I saw this boy and I written a question about like this being a co-ed camp, and then I realized there's the gag that this little boy accidentally got sent to an all girls camp, and he's like the only boy there. And then at the end, like the only thing that really matters is at the end they all like him. They're like, hope you come back next year or whatever.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know if there is a random boy accidentally at an all-girls camp, because I know they go to a camp. I don't know if it's an all-girls camp, and if so, is there a boy accidentally there and they just let him stay?
It is an all-girls camp in the book, but there's not accidentally a boy there. It's definitely something kind of its time in the movie, like that kind of gag.
Yeah.
But I think it is a fun background gag, like especially when he's promising to come back at the end.
Yeah.
Like you just see him occasionally in the background.
Yeah, it's fine. I like that they don't kick him out. They're like, sure, you can stay, whatever. Who cares? Thought that was fun. So then we're kind of establishing the characters of Hallie and Annie beyond what we first got when they were just introduced. And Hallie is a fencing. They're like doing some sort of fencing class at the summer camp. And Hallie is like really good and she's beating everybody. And then Annie walks by and the whoever the fencing instructor, like the person in charge of the fencing class is like, is anybody else, any other challengers? And Annie's like, I'll do it. And then she puts on a fencing mask and they don't see each other before the fencing thing. And then they both have masks on so they can't see each other. Like, I don't know if people, obviously, if you've seen the movie, but if you don't know what a fencing mask looks like, it's like a metal, very fine metal mesh wire that covers your face. So you can't, unless you're right up against it, you can't see the person's face behind it. So they start fencing each other, not realizing that they, are identical twins. And I want to know if any of that fencing scene came from the book. I assumed not, felt very much like a movie thing, at least like the whole big because it turns into a big like thing
Yeah,
where they're
they-
running all over
yeah.
camp, and I assumed that probably wasn't in the book, but any of the fencing stuff, I really thought that scene was a lot of fun. So I don't know if it was in the book.
It is a lot of fun. It is not from the book. They don't fence in the book at all. I really absolutely prefer the movie's version here. In the book, they just immediately see each other as they're getting off the buses. And I like that the movie, one, gives it a little bit more time before they meet. They don't just like immediately see each other. And I also love the drama of them interacting without seeing each other. And then like the moment where they take off their helmets and everybody's like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very fun bit of dramatic irony for the audience.
Yeah.
Because we know,
Yes.
obviously. And so it's very fun that they don't know and they're fencing and stuff and like trash talking each other and whatnot. Yeah, a really fun little scene. A pretty well choreographed little fencing scene, all things considered for a kids movie. I thought it was a pretty well done little fencing scene with some silly stuff mixed in, but every sword fight has silly stuff.
Yeah.
The part where she like runs and like jumps off the tree. Okay, sure.
well, they has some kind of like callbacks to stuff you typically see in
Yes,
sword fight
yes.
scenes, which is a lot of fun.
Yes, they're definitely doing the classic stuff. We even get like the Princess Bride moment where the sword flies out of her hand and then she jumps up on the hay bales and then catches it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get they're definitely doing some very minor homages to like classic, not specifically to anything necessarily, but just
Right,
like
but to,
classic
like, your classic duel
fencing
scenes.
Yeah, which is it is fun. So then after they now realize that they're identical, they don't know that they're related yet because they're dumb, I guess. But I mean, it's one thing if you guys look kind of alike. They are identical.
Right. I would have questions.
Yeah, it's not like they look a little bit alike. They are identical. But whatever. Sure, fair enough. I'll buy it for the film's sake. But they so they still don't know that they're related yet. But they have now formed a rivalry because they're both really good at fencing. But Annie beats Hallie in fencing, and they kind of trash talk each other. And then later that night, Annie is playing poker with everybody, and she's cleaning up at poker. And then Hallie comes in, and they have a poker game. And I wanted to know if the poker game was in the book, because we talked about this in the prequel, but I want to talk about the poker hand.
They do not play poker in the book. I also like this scene, though. I think it's a lot of fun. And I love the shots of, like, the pot with items like hair clips and nail polish in it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's also kind of a classic movie thing where people are playing poker and they just throw, like, random things in with no really like identifying a way to like figure out what the value of any of these things are. They just, I guess if everybody agrees that, one thing of nail polish is equivalent to 5 hair bobby pins or whatever, I'm like, sure, I don't know. But in this hand, and we mentioned this in the prequel because there was like one of the fun facts in the movie, if you didn't listen to the prequel, Annie pulls a straight flush, like an ace through 5 straight flush. And she's like, well, obviously I won. And then Hallie lays down her cards, and she has also a straight flush, but just a better straight flush. She has a royal flush, which is 10 through 8, or no, Jack through 8, Jack, Queen, King, 8, Jack, Queen, King, Ace. Yeah, 10 through Ace, which is like the highest possible hand you can get, I think, depending on the rules. So yeah, she pulls a royal flush, and the math in the prequel that I found was that essentially for those two hands to be pulled in the same hand of poker it would take more hands of poker being played than have been played in Vegas for the last 100 years or something like that. Like the odds are just astronomical.
They're both really good at poker.
That's not how poker works. You don't pull a really good hand by being really good at poker. You can bluff your way out of stuff, but knowing the odds and whatnot is a good thing to know. But yeah, you don't pull a good hand by being good at poker unless they're cheating.
They're really lucky at poker, which must be hereditary.
Yeah, there you go. That or they're cheating, and the movie just didn't show us them cheating, because that could be the other option. Is they're somehow they're like card sharks in there. Was the other option. But anyways, the thing that one of the things I saw is like the odds of winning like the Powerball or whatever it's like this hand of poker is like 10 billion times more unlikely, or it's some ridiculous number than like winning the lottery. So yeah, it's just but it's a movie for kids with poker. You got to make it obvious what's going on. Then again, there's still the rivalry going on, and so after they've now each bested each other in a game of skill of some sort, it escalates to a prank war.
Mhm.
And I wanted to know if any of the prank war was in the book, because this is actually, as we were watching it, one of the things I remembered most from this movie. And I had seen this movie when I was a kid, and I remember liking it. I probably saw it a couple times.
Yeah.
Because this came out when I was like 10 or 11 or whatever. So I was like right in the exact
Yeah,
age
we were
range.
both right in the target age range
Yeah.
for this one.
Yeah, but so I definitely saw this movie at least a couple times and remember liking it as a kid. But I was wondering if any of the prank war, because that stuff really vividly stuck in my head, a
Yeah.
lot of the elements of that.
And that is not from the book. They initially don't like each other in the book, but it's over very quickly.
Oh, okay.
I am glad that they added the prank war. One, again, I think it's fun. And also, I think it fits with other movies in this genre from this era.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely fun for sure. I enjoyed it a lot. And I didn't remember this. I thought it was very funny. One of the pranks they do is they move all of their bedroom furniture up on the roof
Mm-hmm.
of one of the cabins, maybe of their I don't know. And it reminded me, we did a similar prank when I was in Scotland with college marching band. Did I ever tell you about this prank that we did?
No, I don't think so.
we had gotten pranked. We would routinely, the drum majors would routinely mess with us, the drum line,
Mhm.
by like stealing our drumsticks and hiding them
Mhm.
places like before we were about to perform. And it was like a whole thing. I mean, it was fine. It was whatever. It was fun. But so one of the final like nights we were there, we were able to, one of the people on the drum line was dating one of the drum majors. So we were able to steal their key to their bedroom because they stayed together. We were in like 2-person rooms, and we were staying at like a college or something like that in like the dorms. And we were able to steal one of their keys, and we took every piece of furniture and everything in there, not stuff in the closets, but the beds, the nightstands, the desks, everything. And we moved all of their furniture and everything into our kitchen. We had like a kitchenette on our floor, and we reset up their bedroom exactly how it was in their bedroom in our kitchen. Identically. And yeah, it reminded me of that because it's just like the beds are just not where they're supposed to be. There's pictures of it somewhere. I have pictures of them, and they were just like, well, guess we're going to sleep here now. I mean, we moved everything back for them afterwards. So now that the prank war has escalated to the point where staff is involved and very upset because they get like plastered with feathers or whatever during one of the pranks, they send both of the girls to the isolation cabin, which is this cabin in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if it's in the middle of nowhere, somewhere.
It's like away from the rest of the camp.
And they marched them out there. And I got to talk about this little moment. They marched them all out there with the whole camp.
Yeah.
And then they all get there. And then the camp leader is like, all right, the rest of you go back to camp. Like as soon as they get there. And it's like, why did you bring them out there? It's so weird. But they send them to this isolation cabin. So the two of them have to stay there together and unsupervised. Seems like a terrible idea to put your two most unruly kids in a cabin by themselves, but whatever. And so this is where they kind of get to bond and learn about each other. And I want to know if the isolation cabin, like, and that's how they get to know each other, kind of, if that came from the book.
It does not come from the book. They don't get sent to an isolation cabin. But I am dying to know from anyone who went to a camp like this if this is actually a thing.
My guess would be if there's anything, it's not. My guess would be they might put you by yourself in a cabin, but not like far away from.
Yeah.
They might have a cabin designated for like a kid who's misbehaving, or like maybe even multiple. But my guess would be like a single, and like you're just there by yourself. Like you don't get to stay with the other kids, but it's like probably would be in this main area where.
Yeah.
That would be my guess. I don't know.
I feel like I think a similar thing happens in Addams Family Values, if I'm remembering correctly.
I've not seen that one. So
I think they get sent to like a separate cabin at one point. It does feel more like a movie trope than something that would happen in real life, but I need to know for sure.
Yeah.
So if you ever went to sleepaway camp, let me know.
Well, that was actually one of my questions. So you obviously never did go to like any sort of.
I didn't ever go to a sleepaway camp. I did like day camp.
Yeah.
a couple times.
So the only sleepaway camp I did was Boy Scout camp, like summer camp, which was like a week long. It wasn't like multiple weeks or anything. It was a week long, and it was it was Boy Scouts. At the time, Scouts was only boys. I think since it's become co-ed, I believe. Very recently, I believe Scouting went completely co-ed, but at the time it was just boys. And so I did that several times, and I'm trying to remember if we had anything like that. Never. I think the closest thing was that there would occasionally, I think my troop, and so that's also different because the way Boy Scout camp, summer camp works, at least in our area, was you're in troops. So like it's all your kid. There was probably like 15 or 20 kids in my troop, which was like the local like area where I lived, basically.
So you knew all of those.
So I knew all of those kids, yeah. And so you all camped together with your like leaders of your group. And so like you went and did other stuff with the other troops and everything, but you like your camping area was just people you knew. And so and your troop leaders were kind of like in charge of like keeping things in line or whatever. The only thing I can think is I might remember is that if there was a kid who was like unruly at night, who was like staying up too late or being obnoxious or like doing whatever, the troop leaders I think would set up an extra tent near them and make that kid sleep in that tent by himself, like near them, basically.
Yeah,
would be like the closest thing. I think I remember that happening, but I might be making.
So you guys camped in tents.
Yes, we also
did
tents. Yeah, we didn't have cabins. We had tents. They were weird. They were Boy Scout summer camp tents, which if anybody ever did that, they're not normal tents. They're literally just a giant canvas tarp. And then you have, we had like basically like wood pallets, but like long as like floorboards basically. And so and the way we always set them up is you literally would just set it up like a rain fly. You wouldn't even use like walls or doors. We just had it like a roof and you would just sleep with just out like.
I don't like that.
It was actually way better because if you kept we were in Missouri in the middle of summer, in canvas tent. If you let the doors shut, and it was 1,000 degrees in those things. So you literally had to use them just like a rain fly to get any airflow, and it also kept them from spiders from getting on you. It was a whole thing. But anyways, that's the closest experience I have. I never did like a co-ed cabin sleepaway camp or anything like that. So. All right. The thing that finally allows them to figure out that they are, in fact, twins is they both have this separate halves of a picture, which we see taken at the beginning of the film, which is when their parents got married on the Queen Elizabeth. When they split up, they tore the picture in half, and each child has a picture of their other parent that they didn't grow up with. And I wanted to know if that torn picture is like a key thing, because that felt like it had to come from the book, because it feels like such a pivotal element.
This is actually not from the book.
Really?
Yeah. And I much prefer the movie's version. So what happens in the book is that Lisa, Hallie, has a picture of her mother that she got from her dad, and she shows it to Lottie, Annie, who of course recognizes her mother.
Right.
And I'll grant that the book's version is probably more realistic. But I love the drama of putting the two ripped halves together.
Yeah.
That's chef's kiss.
Yeah. Also want to clarify there's probably people who have seen the original Disney movie, the 1961. Yeah. Some of this stuff may have been in that they then copied and put in this.
Yes, I believe it is.
Wouldn't surprise me, because one of the things that we mentioned in the prequel, if you didn't listen, is one of the screenwriters, it was his last credited screenwriting role on this film, was the guy who wrote the Disney original one, the 1961 version, or whatever year it was in the 60s. He wrote that. He also worked on this screenplay, so I'm assuming they probably borrowed quite a bit of elements from that to incorporate into this. The stuff that they thought worked really well, at least. So I'm sure a lot of the stuff in this happened in that movie, but not in the book. So now they realize they are twins and that they hatch this plan. I believe Hallie hatches this, I think Hallie hatches this plan to basically switch places when they leave camp, and each of them go home with the other parent, so that the way they can meet those parents and get to know them and stuff, since they never met them in their whole lives. And in order to do this, though, they need to look identical, and Annie has longer hair and doesn't have pierced ears. So they cut her hair, but then they have to pierce her ears, and I wanted to know if the ear piercing scene that is in the movie, if that happens in the book, if they have to pierce her ears so that she looks like Hallie.
There's no ear piercing or hair cutting in the book. Again, I love this edition. I think having to physically alter one of the girls' appearances really ups the ante. In the book, the only physical difference between the two is that Lottie wears her hair in braids and Lisa doesn't, which is pretty boring.
Yeah.
Like, that's not interesting.
No.
Also, that ear piercing scene is just an iconic. It's burned in my memory. From watching it as a child.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, we talked about it in the prequel, but that was Roger Ebert's only criticism
big
of this film.
About this film.
He was worried it was because it does basically show you everything you need to do.
Yeah.
And so he was worried that a bunch of little kids were going to start piercing their own ears after watching that scene in the movie. So it's like showing, somebody making a bomb in a movie. It's like, maybe that's not the most responsible thing. But whatever. It's
I wonder
fine.
if there was an uptick in home piercings.
There probably was.
After this.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Because, like I said, the movie shows you basically all the stuff. Not that there's that many, but it shows you pretty much step by step what, the kind of a way to do it. And so, I could see people, probably not the best way to do it. I'm sure holding a raw potato to your ear is not ideal for cleanliness or whatever, piercing into a raw potato. But, the idea, it makes sense. I get it. They have now returned home to their irrespective homes, they're the opposite homes. And everything's going fine with Annie or with Hallie in England with her family because they all just kind of immediately yeah, sure. But in America, in California, Annie with Hallie's dad or with her dad and that family, they have a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And the dog is sus. He does not. He is this is not.
The dog knows that something is afoot.
Yes. I wanted to know if the dog element came from the book because I thought that was clever.
It does. Yeah, there's something very, very similar. It's not her dog, but somebody else who lives in their apartment building has a dog. And that dog similarly does not recognize Lottie/Annie pretending to be Lisa/Hallie. There
you go. That makes sense. All right, getting to the main conflict of the film, obviously beyond the parent switching or the kid switching stuff, the main sort of driving drama in the film is that Nick has a new girlfriend when Annie returns pretending to be Hallie from camp. She finds out that he has a new girlfriend, a much younger girlfriend. She's 26 and he's in his 40s or whatever. And they are actually they're engaged or going to be engaged very shortly. They're getting married in 2 weeks, actually, in the film, which I thought was crazy because we find out that she was gone for 8 weeks to camp.
Right.
And apparently Hallie did not know Meredith beforehand.
Yeah.
So while she was gone for 8 weeks, they met, started dating, and now they're getting married within a 10-week span, which is just wild. Less than 3 months. That being said, whatever.
I guess when you have the money to pull off that kind of wedding schedule,
and also I can understand the idea with him too. He's in his 40s. He's I don't want to wait any long. I don't want to why wait? Whatever. I guess could be part of it, but it's still crazy. It was less than 3 months, and they're getting married. But I wanted to know if that whole plot of Meredith being the gold digger, moving in on their dad, if that's a subplot or main plot of the book.
There is a similar character/situation in the book. Her name is Irene, and she has a similar vibe to Meredith. She's a young, hot socialite who wants to get with their dad because he's successful and wealthy, at least to some degree.
Yeah. Well, you said they lived in New York?
They live in
or no, because it's
in Europe. They live in Vienna.
Okay,
I think.
So if he could be in a nice apartment in Vienna, could be fairly wealthy. Yeah, honestly.
They do eventually get engaged, but we really don't interact with Irene much in the book. We do a little bit, definitely not as much as Meredith. And then at the end, she kind of just leaves.
Mm-hmm.
She's screw this, I'm out. I think the movie made a really good call to expand Meredith's role and make her the central villain. That's something that the book kind of lacks.
Mm-hmm.
I think overall the movie utilizes her character in a far more interesting way.
Yeah.
And since you brought it up, I want to talk about this because it seems like weddings just happen awfully fast in this universe. So you mentioned Nick and Meredith. They go from apparently not knowing each other to wanting to get married within the span of like 8 weeks.
Yeah. I think they might have known each other. I think because doesn't she work for him? I think she's like a PR person for the wine company.
She's like a PR person. I guess we don't know if he, but we know that Hallie had never met her.
We know Hallie doesn't really know.
So we don't know, I guess, how long he's like known her.
They may have known each other longer
previously. Fair enough. But I want to talk about this because I know that this is probably just like an issue with like a script oversight, but I noticed upon this rewatch. So at the beginning of the movie, we see Nick and Elizabeth getting married on the boat.
Mm-hmm.
And we see the bottle of wine that they drink from. And then later on, he has one of the same bottles of wine. And he's like, this is the wine from our wedding.
Right.
But when the twins recreate the date for them.
I thought about this, yeah.
And the mom, Elizabeth, says they're recreating the night we met.
Yeah.
And now I know that
because they recreated on the boat.
Yes,
like,
they recreated on the boat, and it's a whole like it's a carbon copy of like the photo, which we know is from their wedding.
Yeah. Yeah. It is weird. I don't
and I said, I know it's probably just a script oversight. But also in canon,
cruise, maybe.
In canon, they met and got married on the same night.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say it could be they could have been on like a multi-week cruise and they met and then got married by the end of it, maybe, or they did it on the same night. Who knows? Maybe that's why it didn't work out. But yeah, no, it is.
I think that would actually be a great explanation for why it didn't work out.
Yeah, we were on a booze cruise and just decided let's do it, and this was a mistake. Yeah, absolutely. So we mentioned Chessie a little bit earlier, but she is the nanny / housekeeper for Nick and Hallie in the U.S. And in the film, she figures out that Hallie is not Hallie, that it's Annie.
She knows something is up. Like she knows something
is up pretty much immediately. She can just tell from like the way she's acting and stuff. And she figures it out, but she keeps it a secret, which I thought was really cool, and I liked that a lot. And I wanted to know if that character figuring it out was part of the book or something her, because you said her character Rosa is in the book. If Rosa figures it out and keeps it a secret.
Yeah, like I mentioned, Lisa and her dad do have a housekeeper in the book. Her name is Rosa, but she's not a major character or even really like a secondary character. Maybe a tertiary character at best in the book. And she and Lisa are not close. So she doesn't figure it out in the book. But once again, I do think that the movie made a really good call to expand that character into Chessie. Elisa Ann Walter, as you said, absolutely crushes
she's
it.
She's amazing in the role.
And I love that she's just fully on the twins' side.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
If you don't know, this was surprising to me. I think I mentioned it in the prequel, but Lisa Ann Walter, who plays Chessie, is one of the main characters, Miss Simonetti, right? No, something like that.
You've said the wrong name, and now I can't think of what her name is.
She's on Abbott Elementary, anyways. It's not Simonetti.
No, it's not.
It's something like that, though. It's something Italian. Schiamenti.
That's what it is. Yeah.
She's Miss Schiamenti on Abbott Elementary.
Yeah, she's great.
But yeah, she's fantastic in this role. Yeah. She's so much fun.
I do have a side note, though. If I were Chessie, every time Hallie was like, I'm growing up without a mother, I'd be like, okay, well, screw me, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much raising this child, it would seem. So, yeah. Yeah, and for her whole life, too. It's not like she just showed up in the last couple of years. She's been there since she was born. Because she knew, that's the thing, she knows
remembers Annie.
Yeah, she remembers her. She was
and Elizabeth.
Yeah, that's wild. So move on a little bit, and this is where Nick sits down and is going to explain to Annie, well, Hallie, he thinks, that him and Meredith are getting engaged. They're getting married, that they are engaged and they're going to be married. And he's like, hey, I just wanted you to know, like, what did you think? What would you think about Meredith joining the family? And there's this great gag in this scene where Annie's like, oh, I've always wanted a big sister. And plays it off like she thinks that they're adopting Meredith because she's so young. That makes sense. You know, I've always wanted a big sister. Now I'm going to have a big sister. It's so nice of you to you know, bring her in and take care of her or whatever. And he's like, no, I'm marrying her. Very funny. And I want to know if any of that came from the book, because that got me.
It does not come from the book, but I love it. Heckin' got him.
Yes.
And I love that for a moment, for a second, he reconsiders every single one of his life choices.
Oh no. It's even funnier when you know that, because we talked about this in the prequel, that Dennis Quaid, 20 years after this, married a 26-year-old. And it's just like, that scene had to be going through his head.
Right.
It had to be going through his head. And I believe we mentioned that the actress who plays Meredith Blake, like, tweeted at him. I don't know how, like, serious it was, or if she was like if it was good-natured or ill-natured. But she tweeted at him something about, like, look out for the twins or something like that. Or when the news broke that he was marrying a 26-year-old. Anyways. Don't want to get into that. I kind of do. So, what are your opinions on that? He's 64-ish. He's in his 60s. She's 26. Thoughts? Let's get canceled.
You know, everyone involved in the situation is an adult.
Yep.
And adults can make their own choices.
Yep.
Personally, it gives me the ick.
Yeah. To me, where I come down on it, and because I thought about this a lot when I was thinking, like, watching the movie and stuff, I was just kind of thinking about it in the background. I thought about it a lot. And where it comes down to me is like, yeah, they're all adults. She seemingly would, as far as we know, there's no, like, I don't know the details of without knowing the details of, like, if she, like, was, like, working for him, you know. I don't know if there were any other weird power dynamics at play of, like, if she was, like, an actress trying to, like, I don't know any of that. So discounting any of that, let's say they just, like, met at a party or something and they didn't know each other at all or whatever. Yeah, they're all adults, whatever. The thing that's weird to me, and it's, I would go into that relationship. I would approach that relationship very skeptically. Of like I just can't fathom that they would have anything in common, and that would make it weird to me. Like, I would question the, like, I don't want to say the validity of their relationship, but, like, the I don't know. It just, again, it's like I said, they're all adults. They can make whatever decision they want. And it's possible. I think it's completely possible that a 26-year-old and a 60-year-old could have, like, a perfectly healthy, happy relationship. I don't think that's, like, completely outlandish. I don't think it's impossible. I think it's totally possible, but you would have to prove it to me. I guess is the point. Like, I would go in and be like, all right, now prove to me that you guys have a normal relationship.
Like, yeah, I mean, like, that much of an age gap. Like I said, you're both adults. Cool.
Yeah.
I can't stop you. I don't want to stop you. Like,
yeah.
That's your business. But I'm giving you major side eye.
That's the thing. It's like I'm coming into this, like, with side eye, whereas it's just like I want, like, prove to me that you guys actually like each other. I don't know, that you care, like, and again, if you don't, if both of you go in knowing that it's just a transactional relationship, I don't care about that either.
Yeah.
Like, if they want to admit, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't know. As long as everybody's, I guess, informed and knows, and I guess that's the thing I would be going in skeptical of, that everybody involved there is, like, fully cognizant of, like,
fully informed consent.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's just interesting. That's a weird one. That's a weird, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and the thing, because it's to me, it's the thing of, like, well, I would never, I can't fathom being that old and wanting to be not only wanting to date a 26-year-old, wanting to be around a 26-year-old when I'm 60. I just don't want to go away from me. I'm gonna I don't want anything to do with children when I'm 60 years old. And I'm sorry, I know 26 obviously isn't a child, but when you're 60, they might as well be. And I just I can't you would just have to I don't know. I would be very skeptical that yeah. But I could be proven wrong. I would try to go in with an open mind. Be like, yep, maybe so. Look at that. Look how great their relationship is.
I do find youths exhausting.
Anyways. All right, done with that tangent. Though we move on from there, things kind of escalate without a lot of explanation. Things get a little messy. They all end up at a hotel together, basically. It's not that there's no explanation, there is, but there's a lot of moving parts going on. Yeah. Where basically Hallie pretending to be Annie.
Hallie gets found out by the grandfather.
Yes.
By their grandfather, who encourages her to tell her mother.
Yes, and she does. And so they're going to fly back.
Yes, and her mother thinks that her father also knows what's going on.
But he does not.
But he doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yet.
So they get to this hotel, they're all there, and there's all these moving parts because the grandfather knows, well, he's not there, but the butler knows he's there. Elizabeth, the mom, knows she's there. And then Meredith is also there, but she doesn't know anything.
Yeah, she thinks they're scoping out the hotel for the wedding.
Yes, because her and Nick are there, they think, for the wedding. Well, they are there for the wedding, right? Yes. And so they're looking at the wedding, so they're there, and Nick doesn't know. And then, so there's all this hijinks of people running into each other and not knowing who the other person is. There's also the side thing of Hallie's, Annie, the mom, Elizabeth, is a wedding dress designer, and Meredith recognizes her. Yeah. Or recognizes her name because she really loves her wedding dresses. And so they start talking before they realize who each other are. So there's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of hijinks and fun of misidentification, of just not knowing, who's who and what's going on until eventually all is revealed in a big chaotic scene at the pool. And I wanted to know if any of that chaos at the hotel came from the book.
So no, it doesn't.
Okay.
There is not a scene similar to this. And I have to say that I think including this was a good call as well. I think you just can't have a long-lost twins mistaken identity story without this kind of scene.
Yeah.
With the hijinks and everybody running around and who knows what, and everybody thinks somebody's everybody else.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah. It does make for a lot of fun, chaos again, because there's even little moments where Meredith, where Elizabeth sees Nick in the elevator with some woman, but doesn't see the woman. And then later she's at the bar with Meredith and doesn't realize she was the woman in the elevator. There's all those different things going on. And it's a lot of good fun. So after this all happens, they figure out what's going on. The kids try to set them up together on a date. Like you said, they recreate their first date or whatever on the boat.
Their wedding.
Or their wedding.
Or both. We don't know.
And take them to this small yacht where they set up a recreation of the picture, basically, which was their wedding, for them to have dinner, hoping they'll get back together. They decide not to try it again or whatever, but they're going to work out something custody-wise with the kids. And then the next day, they're kind of basically explaining that to the kids, and the kids are like, well, we're not going to tell you which one of us is, which one is which, until you guys take us camping, because we want to go camping, because he said we would go camping, and their hope is that on this camping trip they'll rekindle their old flame or whatever. And I wanted to know if that dynamic of them refusing to tell their parents who is part of the book's plotline, because I thought that was fun too.
It's not.
Really?
Yeah. Camping trip's not in the book at all. They don't ever throw down an ultimatum oh, we're not going to tell you which one is which. So what happens is that near the end of the book, Lottie gets really sick, and that's what brings the parents back together. They rekindle their romance over their sickly child.
It's a bit of a downer.
That's a little bit of a downer. I much prefer the camping trip.
Yeah. Okay, well then that ruins my next question, because my next question was, does in the movie, originally it was supposed to be Elizabeth, Nick, and the two girls going on the camping trip, but at the last minute, Elizabeth's like, oh, why don't you go, Meredith, and I'll stay back. And the kids just agree to this. So obviously I was going to ask if any of the camping trip and all that was in the movie, or was in the book. But I'll just change this to the second half of my question, which is why do the kids agree to do this in the movie? Because their mom's like, no, Meredith, you go, I'll stay here. And the kids are just like, oh, darn it, okay. And they go camping. I'm like, but the whole point
Right.
that was like, they're just like, go along with it. But that was not what they wanted. I don't get why they go along with it.
I don't know why they don't protest more. Maybe because it was just too late.
Yeah.
Like, because she waits until they're literally
in the car,
to drive away, which I think that Elizabeth knew what she was doing in this moment.
Yes, I agree with that. Yes. But the kids don't. They're upset.
Right.
Like, she didn't, like, cue them in, like, this'll, like, she, you know, I agree that Elizabeth knew what she was doing, but I just don't get what the kids
I think it may, like, waiting until the very last second may have been part of it.
Yeah, because then they don't have really
they
time
don't.
to
Yeah, they don't have
blah, blah, blah.
time to put up a big like. Dad can just hit the gas and go.
And go. Yeah, yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Also, I know in canon that Chessie was out with Martin while they were out camping, but I would totally watch a movie about Elizabeth and Chessie having a girls' night while everyone is camping.
Yeah, that would have been fun.
I would watch that movie.
So then, obviously, with no camping trick, they don't do the pranks on Meredith, but I had to ask. I mean, I was gonna ask, maybe there's anything similar. You said in the book she just the girlfriend, the evil girlfriend, just kind of disappears. But in the movie, the last prank that is the final straw after a bunch of stuff, like they put a lizard on her and stuff. But the final one is if she takes an Ambien to go to sleep, they drag her air mattress out into the lake and float her out into the lake.
Just set her afloat.
And I was like, oh, just casually drowning your dad's girlfriend as a prank.
Yeah, as far as pranks go, this is a pretty serious one.
Pretty intense prank. I think if Meredith had reacted even slightly differently, it would have been like if her reaction was almost understandable if she had just channeled it slightly differently. Because she never once mentions, "Hey, your children almost murdered me."
Yeah.
I was on an Ambien. They drugged me. If I rolled off the thing, I probably would have drowned. Yeah. But she never mentions that. She just gets very upset and tells them to choose, them over her. Anyways, so obviously nothing like that happens.
No, nothing like that happens in the book. This scene is burned in my memory. I love it so much. I believe they do go on a camping trip in the 1960s in the Haley Mills movie.
Yeah.
I don't think they push the girlfriend out onto the lake though. I've seen like
air mattresses weren't as popular back then. So.
I've seen bits and pieces of that one. I've never seen it all the way through. I think what they do is they put like honey on her feet, and then when she wakes up, they're like baby bears licking her feet, which is kind of just adorable.
Yeah.
Unless Mama Bear is like
that's
not
also
far
like
behind,
borderline
that's also pretty
murdering.
dangerous.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. And they also might not have assumed bears. They might have hoped like raccoons or something. Either way, still you can give them whatever. Still not great, but it's a story, obviously. Is there a moment, I didn't have this in my notes, but is there a moment where the new girlfriend like ultimatums like pick them or me?
No, after Lottie is sick, she's mad because the dad like wasn't taking her phone calls.
Yeah.
And then he eventually he goes to his studio and she's there and she's like, "It was really rude of you to not take my phone calls." And he's like, "Well, my kid is really sick."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well, I guess then I know what you like value," or something like something to that effect. I don't remember exactly what she says.
Like,
and then she's like, "Yeah, I'm leaving."
Okay. So just the movie just amps it up.
So
and makes it very
kind
dramatic.
of anticlimactic.
Right. Okay. And then my last question for this section was, do the parents end up back together?
They do.
Okay. Because I will say, normally I'm a fan of stories that don't reinforce the traditional, like, now that our parents are back together, we can be a real family because our parents that were divorced are, like, I'm a fan of divorce. I think divorces are always good. Pretty much. If you get to the point where you're getting a divorce, you should probably have done it already a while ago. Usually, like, for the most part. So I'm usually a fan of divorce. That's a good thing. Splitting away from people, like, usually, in most situations. I understand it, if you're a child of divorce, it is a traumatic experience. I'm not saying it's good for the kids necessarily, but I think arguably it is still better for the kids, assuming everything can be handled well or whatever and figure out a good custody situation and blah, blah, blah. and co-parenting situation. But so normally I'm not into the movies that are like, wow, we got the parents are back together and we're a real family, because again, a real family is whoever your family is and not some dumb
real families can look like a lot of things.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So like normally it's but that all being said, I think in this instance, in this movie, it works really well, and I wouldn't. So obviously the book is a very similar idea.
Yes, they do get back together at the end. I actually think it works better in the movie because we see more of the parents interacting with each other in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious that they're still into each other.
Yeah.
In the movie.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that for sure.
Like, it doesn't not work in the book. I just think it works a little better in the movie.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Natasha Richardson and Dennis Quaid have really good chemistry together in the film. In a way that, it's hard to get that from the book, probably in the same way. So yeah, especially because they're not the focus.
No.
So it's just a handful of scenes we get in the movie. Those two are able to do a really good job, making us believe that there is an old flame that still burns there. All right, I got a couple questions for Lost in Adaptation.
Just show me the way to get out of here, and I'll be on my way.
Is it lost?
Yes, and I want to get unlost as soon as possible.
Wasn't expecting to have any for this section, but I did have two. And the first one is, why is Annie at this camp? Which I believe would be Lottie whichever one had to. So I guess it's in the movie version, Lottie is in London, or Annie is in London and Hallie is in California, and this camp I don't think we know exactly.
I think it's
where it
implied to be like on the East Coast somewhere.
Really? Okay, yeah.
Because Annie or Hallie at one point says, "I live across the country."
She does, and she does fly home. Yeah. So yeah, it's somewhere far enough that she has to fly.
Yeah.
Point being, why? I guess it's a question why either of them are there, because it's not like there's not millions of these camps in California. But whatever. Why is Annie flying over from London to go to this camp? Is there any extra explanation, or maybe the camp in the book makes more sense? I don't know.
So I'm pretty sure that's the reason the movie kind of glosses over this. It really doesn't make all that much sense. I guess I don't know if England has an equivalent to rustic sleepaway summer camp, but surely there's something similar a little closer to home.
There must
like
be.
Maybe you cross the channel instead of the Atlantic Ocean.
There's gotta be it in England. Come on.
But the other thing is that it doesn't seem like Annie's vibe. At all.
No.
Like, she shows up in like a little matching
she looks like a
suit
business
set
woman,
and like kitten heels.
Yeah.
It does not seem like her vibe even a little.
She does drop into it very quickly. Like, she does adapt to it very quickly. But yes, initially it does not seem like her speed, her tempo. Yeah.
It makes more sense in the book. Lisa/Hallie is from Vienna, and Lottie/Annie is from Munich. So they don't even really live that far apart.
Right, yeah.
It's like a few hours apart, I think. The camp and lake that they meet at is made up, I'm pretty sure. I tried to Google it and everything just took me back to the book, so I'm pretty sure it's made up.
Yeah.
But I got that the vibe was kind of that it's somewhere in between them.
Yeah, which I guess in the movie it is also somewhere in between them, but in a way that makes no sense.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's like, if in the book it's between these two cities in Europe that are like, 5 hours apart, and there's a summer camp 2 hours from each of them or something.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense at least. That they would both end up there, but in this one, it's like neither. It makes no sense that either of them are there in the film. But they're just like, who cares? Which, fine, whatever. It's a gimme. You can have your gimme to get your movie going. I don't mind.
So in the book, Lottie/Annie's mom sends her to this camp because she wants her to interact with other little girls and like spend time being a kid. They aren't wealthy in the book, and her mom she works a lot to make ends meet as a single mother in the 50s.
Yeah.
So Lottie has grown up like taking care of the house, like doing cooking and cleaning and everything, that kind of thing, which has made her really serious and like older than she is, quote unquote. So basically her mom wants her to cut loose and be a kid.
That's an interesting dynamic.
She's like, go to summer camp, kid.
Yeah. Because that is one of the things with the movie is they're both just rich kids.
Yes.
They're just like both obnoxiously rich children. And it's like, all right. I think that is a more interesting dynamic. Because I think that is another thing that would be interesting is if one of them wasn't wealthy. Like there's something else different to explore there. It's a whole different movie, obviously.
Right.
That would raise a whole lot of different, dynamics and tensions and stuff like that. If one of the kids was like, their dad was a millionaire and the other one was barely getting by with a single mom who's, scraping to get by and has to like do all the cleaning and stuff themselves. I could see that, I understand why Disney was like, let's just make them both rich so that way we don't have to deal with that dynamic.
And you get a lot of fun set pieces that way,
right, obviously, you get a lot of other fun stuff that comes along with that, but there is something interesting there for sure in the book.
For sure.
And it doesn't sound like even the book really explores that very much.
No, not at all.
Yeah, which seems like it should have. I don't know. I guess not saying that it should have, but if that dynamic's going to be there, if the kids are going to be from starkly different, like socioeconomic things, I feel like there should be at least some discussion of it. Like that feels like a thing that would cause resentment initially.
Like maybe dad should have been sending child support.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. My other question is my last question for Lost in Adaptation is that I also feel like this movie does not do a good job of explaining why both parents kept this secret from their kids. There is a line, I think twice or something. It's mentioned a couple times, and the main line is Elizabeth says, we came up with this arrangement so we'd never have to see each other again, is what she says at one point, like when her and Nick are kind of discussing this. Once everything gets, everything is revealed, they're kind of arguing about this. And that's like the closest we get to a reason, but it just feels like not enough. I'm just like, it's not like it's one thing if they would have known and then they ended up at the same summer camp and like, oh my goodness, like if they had known they had this, but they just lied to them their whole lives and pretended that they didn't have it's just nuts. And I wanted to know if the book expands on that at all.
The book also does not address why the parents chose this specific custody arrangement. And again, I think that's because the story knows that it doesn't make sense if you think about it for even a second. This is the custody arrangement because that's what the plot demands. Yeah. It's a gimme. You have to give the story in order for it to work.
Yeah. They got 2 gimmies in this, though.
Yes, two pretty
normally
big
you
gimmies.
get 1. This and the camp thing are 2 pretty big gimmies.
The movie is also kind of vague about why the parents separated in the first place.
Yeah.
But the book does go into a little more detail, and basically it boils down to the dad being selfish.
Okay.
I will read a passage. But when the dad, had an idea for a composition, he found it absolutely essential to go away immediately and be alone, so that he could note it down and develop it. Such an idea might come when he was at a party. What's become of Palfy, his host would ask, and somebody would answer, he's probably had an idea, and his host would answer, what manners? A man can't run away whenever he gets an idea. But Mr. Palfy could and did. He even used to run out of his own apartment when he was just married. And then, when the little twins howled all day and night in the apartment, and the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra was about to give him the first performance of his first piano concerto, he simply had his grand piano carted away and installed in a studio on Ring Street. He had taken the studio in desperation in order to be able to write his musical compositions. Lisa Lottie Palfy, that's the mom's name, we'll get to that, barely 20 years of age, did not find it very cheerful. She grew desperate and sued for divorce. So basically, he was never freaking around.
Yeah, and that makes sense, but that makes the custody make even less sense in the book. Like if
I would argue that yes, it does.
Absent of a father, and she's like, well, just leave one of them with him, and that kid's screwed. I get like that. It's just wild because at least in the movie, he's a very good father. Like, he's very involved, and so it's at least understandable. They're both like very involved, good parents, so at least makes sense that they would seem okay with like letting, splitting the kids up to some extent. Whereas I don't know why the mom would agree to like let that dude take care of one of their kids. And yeah, definitely should have been getting, she should have taken both kids and should have been getting,
yes.
Whatchamacallit? Child support.
Yeah.
Is what should have happened. But yeah. I don't know because the book takes place in the 40s or whatever, right?
Yeah,
50s.
it was sort of written in 48 or 49.
Yeah, so I don't know
say.
how, and in Europe, I have no idea how that kind of stuff legally works there. Couldn't even begin to tell you. So that may play into it somehow, but probably not.
I feel like it's a miracle they were even able to get a divorce.
Yeah. I don't know when I don't know. Well, she did sue. It wasn't no fault. She sued for divorce. Whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, I was like, I don't think this whole custody arrangement makes any sense. And yeah, I think it's, again, the big thing to me is that they just lied to them and don't tell them that they have a sibling, which is really weird. All right, that's going to do it for my Lost in Adaptation questions. It's time now to find out what Katie thought was better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
So very early in the book, right after Lisa and Lottie see each other, there's a line that I thought was funny. So Lisa sees Lottie and she's immediately kind of hostile. And one of her friends says to her, "The nerve of her coming here with your face." Which it's so like delightfully vintagey.
Yeah.
I just
Coming here with your face. That's good. That's a good line. I'm surprised they wouldn't include that in the because she has friends. Like they each have like
friends. A friend group.
Yeah.
The movie gives the girls matching lockets with like their initials on them. I actually think that's a little bit overkill. I don't mind it. Like, it doesn't spoil my enjoyment of the movie, but I don't think we needed it.
No, I agree completely, because I thought the same thing while we were watching the movie, because they they do the locket thing after they do the photo thing. I'm like, we already did this. It's like somebody wrote, it's like they had multiple writers and they each came up with an idea and they couldn't pick one. And so they just put both of them in.
We'll just do both.
Luckily, I will say, because I thought what was going to happen originally was that the lockets were going to
join together
somehow. And I was like, we literally just did this. They don't do that. They just have their initials on them or whatever. But it's a similar idea. And it's just like, why are we doing this twice? With I thought the same thing.
So in the movie, we do see like a montage of...
You know what? Merchandising.
Oh, you're right.
I bet.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't remember.
I don't know if they sold them, but
I bet they did.
Because if we don't know, I don't even think we ever see a close-up, though, to be fair. But I would just never put past Disney, anytime they think they can sell a thing from a thing, they're going to put it in there, and they can't sell the picture. The picture is great. It's a good story moment.
Yeah.
You can't sell the picture. You can sell the lockets that look like they're lockets.
I'm just going to check eBay real quick. Oh, no exact matches.
Interesting. So, I would have assumed.
Yeah, I would have too. Huh.
That was why they did it. But maybe
not. Yeah. Guess not.
I said,
if anybody remembers them selling like movie tie-in lockets back in the day, I have no memory of that. I think out of the two of us, I would be the one to have the memory of that.
Yes,
but I don't.
I would not remember that at all.
So we see in the movie there's like a montage of them like teaching each other to be the other girl, which they do in the book, but there's a couple of details that I think make a lot of sense. In the book, they make each other like cheat books with a bunch of information in them that they can take back with them. They also do a trial run while they're at camp in the book to see if they
that
can,
would have been fun.
Yeah, to see if they can actually fool people.
Yeah, that would have been fun because you could have done that and had them fail. That would have been a good situation to have them do it, and like hijinks of them like messing up.
Mm-hmm.
Without at low stakes messing up. That could have been fun. Yeah.
I mentioned earlier that Lottie does all of the like cooking and everything because her mom works a lot, which becomes an issue when Lisa takes her place because Lisa does not know how to cook. So we get like a classic cooking disaster.
Doubtfire cooking disaster.
Yeah, which I think could have been a lot of fun in a movie like this.
Does she order takeout at the last minute and rush it in?
No, she does not. Another thing that I thought was interesting is that in the book, the twins managed to keep up this ruse for like weeks.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want the movie to do that. I think the pacing of the movie works fine.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting and fun that they're able to like keep it going for that long.
Yeah, I definitely see why the movie would change it to, like you said, for pacing. Because in the movie, it's like a week maybe that they...
Yeah, it's not very long.
That they keep it up before that it all kind of, gets figured out or whatever, but yeah.
My last note here is that I have always really hated the scene in the movie where she lapses into French when she's angry. It doesn't seem like something a real person would do. Like, maybe if her native tongue was French, sure, I would buy that. But I don't think that's supposed to be the case.
Well, and the weirder thing is that do we see her speak French before that scene?
I don't think so.
That's the thing that's weird to me, is that it feels like they should have set it up. And maybe they did once and I'm just not remembering it.
I don't have a problem believing that she knows French.
Yeah.
Because she's like a posh London girl.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I think the bigger issue with that, to me, sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
But the scene to me is like very cringy.
It's just weird. And the thing to me that doesn't work for it is that it doesn't feel like it falls in line with her character.
Yeah.
Like, because, like you said, she's like a posh London girl, but her personality isn't really that.
Yeah,
she's not like a stuck up.
And she's very like reserved too.
Yeah. Well, and she's very like down to earth. She doesn't seem like a stuck up, like obnoxious. Like she is very briefly kind, but even then, not really. Like, I guess you could say she is a little bit very briefly at the very beginning of camp or whatever, like when they first are having their interactions and she's like, you don't have any class or whatever. Like there's a little bit of that, but it drops like immediately and she just becomes like normal or whatever. And so I could see if she was like more obnoxious, because like I assume the idea is that she went to some finishing school and they taught her French.
Yeah. Or
whatever, in her expensive London prep school or something. And so, like, and it is, like, maybe, like, this idea that as part of this, she's not aristocracy, but, like, the upper class, like, upper crusty, like, British person, the people she's around occasionally speak, well, her mom speaks French all the time.
Right.
I guess that could be part of it. Her mom does, because her mom's in fashion. She works with French people a lot. We hear her mom speaking French quite a bit. Or, like, at least in one scene. And I guess I kind of buy it, but I don't disagree that it does feel a little weird that she would do that.
Well, because the movie plays it as like she's so upset and like overcome with emotion that she just starts speaking French.
Yeah.
Which I feel like
she would just drop into a British accent.
Yes, I feel like it's not something that you do with a language that's not like your native. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think I've seen that in other movies. I don't know how real it is, but the idea of certain types of people who do know a second language using it to like curse or whatever, like that's like a kind of a gag in movies sometimes. Right. And so I could see that being the idea. The thing that makes more sense to me is she would just drop into a British accent.
Yeah, she would like lose
the American accent, do the British accent, and he would be like, "Wait, what?" Like that would make more sense than the French thing. But yeah, it didn't bother me much either way. But I can see what you're saying for sure. All right, let's find out what Katie thought was better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
The opening credit scene where we get the montage of the mom and dad getting married, way longer than I remembered.
Yeah, it goes on forever.
Yeah, but I did like it.
It's one of the better opening credit sequences I've seen in a while. Like, if you're doing an opening credit sequence, at least have it be relevant things that I care.
Yeah.
Like, it's telling story. It's not just like random shots.
It was like a pretty good setup that was kind of like... I liked that it was composed of just like different little scenes from this and wasn't like a whole scene in and of itself.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's some weird bits in the book that the movie drops where the adults that are running the camp try to like force the girls to be friends because they look alike.
That's a normal thing.
That's a normal thing for grown-ups to do.
You guys look like you guys should be friends.
Yeah, that's basically it. They're like the person running the camp is like, make them sit together. They look alike. They have to be friends. And I was like, in my notes I have, but why? Like 5 different times. Why do you care? There's also a girl at the camp in the book named Steffi, whose main character trait is being chubby.
Okay.
Every time Steffi is mentioned, it is noted that she's chubby,
Yeah.
which is a thing in children's lit in general, and it's especially a thing in older children's lit.
Doesn't even have to be that old, though.
Yeah. No, it really doesn't have
No,
to
it
be.
doesn't have to be.
Drove me nuts.
Yeah.
I was like, we get it. She's got chubby cheeks. She's carrying a little extra weight. We understand.
Yep.
The mom's name in the book is Lisa Lottie. And I need to know, I know we have some German listeners.
Yeah, I think we do, yeah.
Does this work better in German? Because I don't feel like it works at all in English. Is Lisa Lottie like a name? And I don't know.
Even begin to tell you so.
There's also a great line from one of the girls while they're talking about how their parents split them up. I don't remember who says it, but she says, they separated us just the same as they separated mommy's first name.
That's also really weird.
Yeah.
Like, if that's your first name, just splitting it and giving half to
pretty
each
weird.
of your, it's very strange.
I adored the movie's decision to add the girl's maternal grandfather to the mix.
Yeah,
he does not appear in the book. I thought that was really nice. I like the little scene where Annie doesn't know how to open the door in Hallie's house.
Yeah, and she's like,
pull, yeah. Jesse's like, push, Hal.
Yeah.
I also love the scene where their mom is freaking out while she's packing to go to America. I think that making the plot overall more focused on getting the parents back together works a lot better than what happens in the book. The book, I think, feels a little bit like aimless and coincidental close to the end. Whereas in the movie, right, first we have this kind of driving force of like, let's switch places so we can meet the other parent. And they do mention while they're talking about that like, oh, and then they'll have to switch us back and they'll see each other again. But then once this ruse is discovered, the main like driving force becomes, let's try to get our parents back together.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, so the mom finds out because she happens to see a photo of them that was taken together at the camp.
Yeah.
And then she's like, hey, I know everything. We're going to go to your dad's. And then when they get there, the other kid is really, really sick.
Oh.
And that's
where, yeah.
just kind of how the book ends.
Right.
And it just feels a little like aimless.
Yeah.
At
Kind
the
of
end.
anticlimactic.
Yeah, kind of anticlimactic. Whereas I think like the movie's decision to then like shift the focus to let's try to set up our parents works a little better.
Mm-hmm.
The camping trip is not in the book, as I mentioned. So here's a list of things that I like from that part. Non-exhaustive. I like the lizard on the water bottle and on her head. I did feel bad for the lizard.
I hated the part where it goes in her mouth because it's dumb. I liked the rest of it, but the part where it runs down her face into her mouth, it's like, what? Lizard would never do that, for one. It's fine. I get it. It's, you know, it's a gag in a kid's movie. It's fine. But it's, I don't know. It's just weird. I thought the part where it goes in her mouth, didn't like that. Cut the rest, just leave the rest of it. Just cut the part where it like climbs into her mouth head first, and then we're fine. It just felt weird. I felt like I was like, what am I watching this for?
Yeah, I guess so.
Like, it felt like I was like watching somebody's thinly veiled fetish is what I felt like. Is what it felt like, that moment. I was like, why is this in the movie? I don't know. Just weird.
I liked when Meredith is clacking the sticks together to scare off mountain lions.
Yes.
Although we both in that part, because then Nick is like, there aren't any mountain lions here.
Yeah.
And we both like turn to each other and we're like, there are probably
mountain lions. You're in California.
They're not far from like the Sierra Nevada.
They're in the mountains in California. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's mountain lions there.
I already talked about the air mattress. And then I really like the moment where Meredith is like, it's me or them, take your pick. And the dad is just like, them.
Like immediately.
That's like it's not even a question.
Yeah, that is nice.
Yeah. And it's a little cheesy, but I really enjoy the fake out at the end where you think that they're all separating again, but then Hallie and Nick are just in England ahead of them somehow.
Not somehow. They took the Concorde.
Whatever
a thing
that
that
is.
doesn't exist anymore. And I think that might have been the last time that you could even.
What
I think the Concorde
is it? Is
stopped
it
flying in 1999.
Is it like a fast airplane?
The Concorde was a supersonic jetliner.
Oh.
That it started flying in the 60s and stopped flying in 2003. But it's basically it's like a rocket powered plane, basically, kind of. It was very interesting, but you could get from.
I feel like that's not cheap.
No, it's not cheap. It was one, he's a millionaire, so that's
Right.
part of it. But yeah, it flies super fast. I'm trying to remember how fast. Yeah, so the Concorde could make the trip from, because it traveled at like Mach 2, which is over twice the speed of sound, which is not. Commercial airliners don't even get to Mach 1. They do not break the sound barrier. It could get from London to New York in around 3 hours. So assuming I don't know if it flew out of California. I don't know where all it flew from, but add another maybe hour tops to that. So they could get there in half the time, if not less, than a traditional.
I do kind of want to take the screen caps from that scene and like use the dialogue from the end of The Emperor's New Groove.
The map.
Like, how did you get there before us?
By all rights, it makes no sense. Yeah. All right, we got a handful of things that the movie nailed.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
Just a couple things. They do meet at summer camp. We've talked about that extensively. Hallie / Lisa is rude to Annie / Lottie, like right off the bat for not any particular reason.
Yeah.
Just kind of doesn't like her. She stole her face.
To be fair, in the movie, they're not only rude to each other after the duel. They're
That's
not really
true.
rude
Yeah.
before that.
I
They're
mean, they
rude
don't
after they
meet
fight
each other.
That's what I
before
mean.
that,
Yeah. So that's their first interaction, and they have like a.
And then I want to talk about the crossed arms and fingers thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we see both the girls do this a couple times during the movie where they cross fingers on both hands and then cross their arms in front of their chest.
Yeah.
Now, first,
they also do just the crossed fingers.
Yes.
When they're lying or whatever. Yeah.
So there is an illustration in this book that shows one of the girls. She has her fingers double crossed and then she has her arms crossed, but she kind of is like raising her arms up in the air. She doesn't do it like over her chest. So now those illustrations were done in the 80s, so it's possible that is from the 1960s movie.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But also, as soon as I saw them do that, I had like a memory blast because I forgot about it. And we used to do that all the time in elementary school. Yeah. We did the double crossed, triple cross all the time. And I had completely forgotten about it.
A girl thing. So
I think it absolutely probably was a girl thing.
Because I don't remember doing that like ever.
I mean, we all also wanted to be Hallie and Annie. So.
Sure. Yeah. That makes sense. All right, we got a handful of odds and ends before we get to the final verdict.
I really love how effectively the girls' personal styles at the beginning of the movie communicate who they are. Even if Annie's matching suit and kitten heels are like a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
But we've got we meet Hallie and she's dressed in like a very laid back kind of like tomboyish, like hippie style. And then Annie steps out of the car in like Chanel.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Yeah. Looking very, very dapper.
And then later on, she wears like a miniature pale blue pantsuit, which is really something.
Yeah, it really is. So this is a thing I noticed on this watch that I obviously didn't notice when I was a little kid watching this movie, and I haven't seen this since I was a little kid. But I was interested to see if you caught this or thought this or knew anything about this. Is Hallie like canonically gay, like a lesbian or bi or whatever in this movie? Like, is she canonically queer? Because there are several like, it's not just like one thing. There's like at least 3 moments that made me think this over the course of the movie. One of them is when the first one was like whatever, and then things kept adding up. The first one though was when they get to camp and her bag is stuck in the big pile of bags.
Yeah.
She can't get it out. And this other girl walks up and walks over and rips her bag out from the bottom and like starts walking away. And Hallie says, "Oh, that's my kind of lady." And she says it like a oh, hubba hubba kind of thing, which again, on its own could be a little joke or whatever. Fine. Then there's a scene later where that girl is then like riding on Hallie's back. She's giving her a piggyback ride, which again, on its own, not whatever. Like, friends give friends piggyback rides. Not that weird or anything. Or not weird, but it's not that, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. But, and then in the end of that scene, she calls Hallie babe, which again, none of these things independently are like mean anything necessarily. But those, I was like, okay, what, really? And then the final thing, which I thought was the biggest point to me, was that when they get to the cabin, the isolation cabin, Hallie is like pinning pictures and stuff up
like
on her
magazine
wall.
cutouts.
Yeah. And like most of them are women.
Right.
There's like a couple dudes, but most of them are women.
Most notably Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yes, which they mentioned specifically.
Yes.
But most of them are, it's like a lot of women that she has pinned up on the wall. And I was like, and then I did some Googling and I found some Tumblr posts that were very adamant that she is in fact into women. But I was like, I don't know, yeah. So I wanted to get your take on this.
I would say I wouldn't call it canon.
No, I would agree when I was kind of joking.
And especially
when I said
not like for a kids movie in 1998.
Yeah.
I think it's a fun, like, I think it's a popular fan theory.
I think that the filmmakers were even...
and that's possible.
Like,
I don't know if any of the filmmakers have ever like confirmed that that's what they were doing. I think it's entirely possible.
Okay.
But I don't know.
Yeah, it just really stuck out to me because it was like, again, if it was just one of those things, like, yeah, whatever. But there's like multiple things that kept adding up to the point where, like, I wonder if they're like, if that's what they're doing, like very slyly.
Yeah, maybe.
Like trying to sneak it in underneath, behind Walt Disney's back. I don't know. He was dead at this point, but yeah, I just thought it was interesting.
But his ghost lives on. One thing I noticed in like the final big prank scene, where Hallie and her friends mess up their cabin while Annie and her friends are sleeping, I was like, boy, all the other girls in this cabin really became collateral damage here. Yeah. Like, they are way more pranked than Annie is in this scene.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They really are.
Like they dump honey all over one girl or something, and like the other girl, they put like shaving cream all over her head.
Yeah.
Like way more pranked.
Well, they do drop all those water balloons on.
Yeah, Annie. I guess so.
Yeah.
But like initially, she sits up in bed and there's just like nothing wrong with her.
Yeah, it's fine. And then she gets sticky feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
her toes squelch in the molasses, which apparently took a really long time to film.
Yep. So one of the things I thought was very funny in this is that they're in the isolation cabin, they're bonding together, and one of the ways they bond is that Hallie or one of them pulls out a bag of Oreos and is like, "You want some Oreos?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I love Oreos." And then the other one is like, "Oh, but I'm weird. Everybody thinks this is gross, but I like eating my Oreos with peanut butter." And they're like, the other one's like, "So do I." And I'm like, wait, who thinks that's gross? Who thinks putting peanut butter on Oreos is gross? I get being like, I'm the only one I know who does it,
right?
But not gross.
Yeah,
like
it's chocolate and peanut butter. Yeah. That's a pretty common combination.
Yeah, I just thought the idea of calling it gross was weird. I'm like, I don't think anybody would say it's gross. Like, I don't normally put peanut butter on my Oreos. I just eat them by themselves. But I would never be like, that's gross.
No,
I just be like, yeah.
I have to be like, cool.
Yeah,
sure. And we knew we were not getting out of this movie without some of that patent 90s commentary on divorce.
What scene in particular?
When they're in the cabin and they're talking, this is like right before they realize that they're sisters, I think. And one of them is talking about how like horrible it is to have divorced parents, and they're
Yeah.
like, I don't think anyone should get divorced
Yeah.
because it's so hard to
Right.
not have one of your parents, which
Well,
I'm
to
not
be
saying
fair,
it's not.
Coming from a kid, I
Yeah.
don't know how much of it's the movie is saying that's true versus the movie voicing the perspective of a child.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, I'm not denying that. I'm just putting this film within context
Right. Yes.
of the general oeuvre in the 90s,
Which was,
because
yeah.
this was a big thing.
Yeah.
In
Oh
the
no,
90s.
we talked about it in the Santa Claus.
We
bonus
talked about it in the
episode that
Santa
we did.
Claus. We talked about it probably when in Mrs. Doubtfire
Yeah.
as well. The worst thing that could happen to you as a kid in the 90s was
Yes.
for your parents to get divorced.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I have a little bit of notes about this later that we'll talk about like how they did the twin stuff. But there's one scene in particular that I could not figure out. I think it's just green screen. But there's a scene when they get to the cabin, or when they're in the cabin, right before they pull the photos out and like do the like show each other the photos. There's a scene where they're both like walking past each other that looks so good that I don't know how they did it. At first I thought it was a split screen, but then they walk past each other. So I was like, no, it can't be. But it didn't look like a green screen, but it must have been. It must have been a green screen. I just was astonished that it looked as good as it did. I don't know how they did it. That one scene, every other time I could tell how they were doing it. That scene, I was like, holy cow. It was like really impressive. It was impressive all the time because you really couldn't tell.
Yeah,
mostly.
it was pretty good.
Yes, and we'll talk about how they did it a little bit more. But in particular, that scene, I was like, that is wild.
A small note here about the ear piercing scene. It's such a dull needle.
Yeah.
that they
Yes,
use.
it is.
He holds up this giant needle, and it's got
like a knitting
it's
needle.
got the bluntest point
Yeah.
that I've ever seen in my life
Yeah,
on it.
it's
I was like,
crazy.
oh, that's gonna hurt.
Yeah. There's a little scene where they get to London, or when Hallie gets to London pretending to be Annie, and we get like a montage of her like riding around seeing the sights.
Yeah.
I don't understand why in this scene so many of the sights we see are just random statues.
I don't know.
It's not like we do see some of the big landmarks, but
Right.
like when I think of London, I don't think of just like random
Statuary.
statues. Like that's not like if you're going to Rome,
Sure.
like sure,
Yeah.
like or whatever. I don't know. It's just like London. I'm not like, oh, the statue capital of the world, but like half the shots they show is just some random statue of some person.
At least they didn't play London Calling during that scene.
Yeah. I did see a great, I don't know if you retweeted this or a great an edit of that scene. Somebody edited, I think it's that scene where, or maybe it's a different movie, but I'm pretty sure it's that scene where somebody edited that scene together with a scene from James Bond GoldenEye where James Bond steals a tank and is driving it around a city. I think he's in like Munich or Prague or something, and I thought it was that scene, and they like splice it together of like her like looking at stuff and then like the tank like I think it's
If you
that.
find that again,
I'll
send
see
it
if
to
I can
me.
find that tweet. I thought it was
I
this
did not
movie.
see that.
It might have been a different movie, but I thought it was this. Anyways, I'll see if I can find it. It also really annoys me in London that they do the Abbey Road thing.
Oh, I hated this. I hated it.
I don't mind doing it, but like fine, have them do the like whatever, sure. But they freeze frame it.
Yeah.
One, we already got it. We don't need to
Right.
freeze frame it. Two, if you're gonna freeze frame it, at least shoot it at a speed where you can freeze frame it, or take a picture and then put the picture in the movie. They freeze frame the movie, but it's because they're shooting at like 24 frames per second or whatever. They're blurry.
Right.
They're like mid-step, so they're blurry, and that's not what it looks like. It's a photo. Like, if you're gonna do it, at least do it right. It just really annoyed me that they, again, just have them walk across. We all get it. Kids aren't gonna
Yeah.
recognize it either way, so it doesn't matter
Right.
for the kids. Just whatever. Yeah, drove me crazy. And then her mom, who we get to see what some of her mom does. And she designs wedding dresses, as we discussed. But we see one client that she's working with, or a model, maybe.
I think it was a model for like a photo
for
shoot.
a photo shoot or something. And they're like, the dress is missing something. And then they figure out what it's missing. And what it's missing, apparently, is a top hat with a veil. A white top hat with a veil. And I was like, oh no. I assure you that is not what it was missing.
It's very 90s.
Very, yeah.
It's giving Shania Twain.
It's giving Madonna, yeah, Shania Twain for sure. It just, oof. Oof.
I know that it's been said to death, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the custody arrangement in this story is insane.
Yeah.
It's bonkers. Imagine being the judge who agreed to this custody
There's
arrangement.
no way there was a judge involved.
Well, I
they
feel
just
like
did this on their own.
But if they got officially divorced, wouldn't they have to?
You would think.
Have like a
Yeah,
legal
I don't
custody arrangement?
Yeah. Maybe they weren't officially divorced.
I feel like if I were the judge and they came to me with this proposition of like,
no, what is wrong with you?
I would be calling Child
Yes.
Protective Services.
Yeah.
I'd be like, these people are crazy.
Yeah, absolutely not. No, you cannot take your children to opposite continents and then not tell them about each other. No. What? No. I'm amazed that you even thought you thought I would say yes to this. No. Yeah. I also realized, I didn't realize when we were initially when we were talking about the movie and the prequel and stuff, that the mom, Natasha Richardson, I knew her from this movie only. She's been in a bunch of stuff. But I was Googling when we were watching the movie, I clicked on her thing because I was like, what else do I know her from anything else? And then I realized what I knew her from. She was married to Liam Neeson, and she very famously died in a skiing accident.
Very, very tragically.
Yeah, tragically died in a skiing
she
accident.
Hit her head and then died the next morning.
Yeah, did not realize that was her. I did not realize that. I obviously saw this movie when I was a kid, but I never connected those, because I heard about that when it happened, back in the early 2000s or whatever. Or I think it was 2008
it was
or something.
2008 or 2009, yeah.
But yeah, I remember hearing about that, but did not connect that was this actress. I just didn't realize. Oh, wow.
I saw something, I was looking something up about this movie, that her son watches this movie because he said it was the closest to how she was in real life. He likes watching this movie because of that, which is really sweet and sad.
That's really nice.
We talked a little bit about Dennis Quaid in real life now, because my note here says I don't know how Dennis Quaid is in real life. I think he sucks too, but Tim, he was the hot dad blueprint in this movie. Just hot dad blueprint.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it for sure, absolutely. There's the scene when they do the dinner, the fake dinner on the boat. They're the butler and Chessie are both there. Martin and Chessie are both there, serving them dinner. And Lisa Ann Walter in that naval outfit, was working. It was working for me.
She looks good.
It was working. There's also this throwaway line when they're during that dinner. They're joking about when they broke up, and they're like, "Ha ha, you threw a blow dryer at my face," and I'm like, "That's funny." That's hilarious.
Casual, hilarious spousal abuse.
Yep, hilarious. So funny. And then also when they're, I think it's during, I don't remember it might be at the hotel. Or I don't remember.
I think this was when they were camping.
Oh, it is. It's right.
Yeah.
It's when they're going camping. We get, it's right, because they turn it on the radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, they turn on the radio at one point, and How Bizarre is playing. And I was like, oh no. Oh, that
song was on the radio all the time.
Oh my gosh.
All the
Constantly.
time.
Yeah.
And then it vanished.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a true one-hit wonder right there. What's his name? OEM, or I can't remember what that artist's name was, but holy cow, that song is OMC. Yeah. How Bizarre.
That song was on the radio at least once, every time we got in the car in that area.
That was
that era.
one of the biggest song in the world for a year or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a thing that I wanted to talk about. Didn't know where else to put it, so I stuck it in here. So there's something that happens in the book that I feel like was a huge missed opportunity for both the book and the movie. So in the book, while they're at camp, there's a girl there who goes to school with Lisa, with the Hallie character. And so she's there while they're at camp, and then she just vanishes from the story. And then at the end of the story, at the very end, when Lottie starts going to the same school as Lisa, she pops up again. And she's and we find out that the twins bribed her to keep quiet about the whole thing. And I was like, why did we not know more about this? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that should have been more of a plot point. Like, that could have been a good, like, obstacle.
Yeah.
But they didn't do anything with it.
Yeah, it probably makes sense to drop it for the movie's case then, because
I mean, yeah.
unless you're going to do something with it, and it's probably
Right.
just,
Well, I'm just
movie's
saying,
already long,
like,
too, so.
yeah, that's true. As long as we're like adapting, like, I feel like if I were adapting this book, that would be something that I would look at and be like, I feel like I could do something with this.
Yeah, for sure, you definitely could.
But the book doesn't do anything with it, so
Yeah. And then finally, before we get to the wrap of this up, talking about how they did the two Lindsay Lohans. Primarily, like they use some split screening, but actually a lot less than I thought they were going to.
yeah.
They use a lot of body doubles. Whenever you
Yes.
see like the back of
Yeah.
her head, it's a body double. But they do a ton of green screening, which I wasn't expecting. Where
and it looks pretty good.
And it looks really good. I
Yeah.
will say you can usually tell by the lighting.
Mm-hmm.
You can usually tell that the lighting, because they'll be right next to each other, and the light will be hitting one of them in one way and the other one slightly different. That being said, other than like some of the highlights and stuff, the color matching and stuff looks almost identical, and it looks really good. In some places, to some point where I couldn't tell if they were doing a split screen or a green screen. And so, yeah, but those are the main three ways: is they use a body double when you see the back of her, or for certain scenes like that, where you're not seeing their face. It's just somebody that looks like her from behind or from the side.
Yeah, somebody wearing a wig.
Either wearing a wig or just another girl who
Yeah.
has whatever. And then I think it is a wig. It did look like a wig.
It did
a
look
lot of
like
the
a
time.
wig, yeah.
And then the green screening, yeah, it's just they film her in front of a green screen and then composite her into the shot, basically. And then, yeah, split screening on some of it.
Well, how does split screening work? I think that's the only thing that I don't really know how it works.
So I mean, there's a couple ways to do it, and there's more complicated ways, which I think might have been what they were doing for some of them. I mean, the basic gist of it boiled down to its simplest, is literally just, which you'll see this in some movies for certain effects and stuff, beyond twin stuff, but most commonly where they're doing like twin things with somebody who's not a twin. If your camera is sitting there and it's not moving, you can record. You can have her stand on one side of the frame, deliver her lines, then walk over to the other side of the frame, deliver her lines, and then you literally just, because the camera hasn't moved,
right?
You just, as long as neither one of them crosses whatever the midpoint is, and it doesn't have to be exactly in the middle. You can put that line kind of wherever you want. Basically, it's two different pieces of video running simultaneously, but edited together, like split down the middle,
and then like spliced together.
Yes, essentially split down the middle together.
Okay.
And then so like you're seeing, this one part A was recorded a few minutes before part B, and then you just put them together.
I gotcha.
I will say I don't think they did that nearly as much as I was expecting them to, because that's like the old traditional way to do it.
Yeah.
To do this, they used a lot more green screen than I thought they would, because green screen is often easy to tell, but they, like I said, they did a really good job where you couldn't. It was noticeable enough to me, but I know how to see that stuff. Like
right.
I edit video and I edit green screen stuff a lot, so like it's not hard for me to like be able to tell that. But
if you don't particularly know what to look for,
don't know what to look for, I think it was very easy to miss. Because like I said, there were even moments where I was like, "Is this green screen? Is this how are they doing this?" But the other thing that they could do, like the thing that, just to go off on a tangent on a little bit, that's really cool, is what you can do with split screening these days with modern cameras. You can get really involved with it, because with like motion controlled cameras and stuff, you can. So originally you would always do it with like a locked down camera that wasn't moving, because if you move it all, then the backgrounds won't line up.
It's going to be messed up.
It won't line up, so you'll be able to tell that it's mismatched. So you just wouldn't move the camera. You would start rolling, you would do half of it, do the second half, and then fix it later in post. Nowadays, with like super specific, like calibrated, like motion control cameras that are like robotic or whatever, you can actually do camera movements and still split screen it, because the camera can recreate the movement so perfectly that you can still match it up.
Interesting.
Basically. And because one of the other things you can do is to hide it is which I've done this before on certain things, certain like small short video projects and stuff. You can shoot a split screen shot like that locked down, and then in post production, you can add fake movement to the camera to make it look like it's like handheld.
Yeah.
Because that'll help trick the eye even more, because you're like, well, they can't have done a split screen because the camera's moving. Like, how are they? So you can add fake movement to it. But again, the step beyond that is motion controlled cameras that can perfectly recreate the same movement twice. So you can do the scene twice with a camera actually moving. And that's actually spoilers if you don't want to know how Darren Brown did his, who's a magician. He did a lottery prediction one time, and from everything I have read, like in real time, like a Powerball prediction, from everything I have read, the way he did that was split screen motion control camera. They basically, I don't know the whole details, and I don't know. It's been a long time since I read about it, but he basically used a motion controlled camera to recreate the same shot twice, and he was able to hide half of the screen where somebody was like, as the numbers were coming out and being announced, somebody was hiding that, was replacing the numbers. Basically, it looked like he had like the Powerballs already set up on a stage, like sitting there, and then he just turns them around and they're the right number, and it's like, holy cow, he predicted the Powerball because he was doing it live, like as the Powerball was happening that night or whatever. But apparently what was actually happening is it was all motion controlled, and they were replacing the half with the balls with a pre-shot like thing that was just the ball sitting there, when actually somebody was changing the balls to whatever they actually were. It's a whole thing. It's very interesting. But anyways,
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
I'm doing a bad job to explain it because it's very complicated and involved. But that was the thing that made me think of the motion control split screening, because I was like, I'm into magic and I like magic stuff. So I remember that supposedly that's how he did that trick, because nobody could figure out for a long time how the heck he did that, because it was like incredibly impressive. But I think it was motion controlled split screen. But anyways. All right, before we wrap up, we can do us a giant favor by heading over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads, any of the social media platforms. Follow us, give us a like. We're going to announce what our next thing is here in a moment, but if you get over to those social platforms now, you still have a couple days to vote.
Yes.
We're doing a poll. We're doing a March Madness bracket like we did last year. If you want to be involved in what the next thing we talk about is, go over to any of those social media platforms. Not Goodreads. We're not doing polls there.
I don't think you can.
Yeah. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or on Patreon if you're on Patreon. And vote. And I think we'll when you're listening to this, we'll be on the final 4 maybe, or 5 polls, 3 polls. Well, we'll have gotten to the final 4 basically. You'll be able to vote on like the final 2 matchups or whatever. So go do that. We really appreciate it. Plus, we want to hear your feedback for the prequel episode. You can also support us by heading over to patreon.com/thisfilmislit. Give us a few bucks a month, get access to bonus content. And at the $15 and up level, you get access to priority recommendations. Was this one?
Yes, it was.
Oh, who was this one from?
This was a patron request from Matilde.
There you go. Thank you, Matilde. Appreciate it a lot. Katie, it's time for the final verdict.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
Like many other children's books that we've covered, The Parent Trap takes the basic premise of Lisa and Lottie and expands on it. The book was cute and I had fun reading it, but I definitely think I would have liked it more had I read it when I was in the target audience's age range. The storytelling style is also dated in a way that is specific to mid-century children's lit, where the plot ends up feeling a little low stakes and somewhat meandering. The movie I remember quite fondly from my own childhood, and I was not disappointed upon revisiting it. The story still works, the entire cast is charming, and I still kind of believe that Lindsay Lohan might secretly have a twin. When making changes to the original story, the movie made several good calls, the best of which were honing in the focus on getting the parents back together, expanding Meredith's character into a full-on central villain, and showing more of the parents interacting and being clearly still in love with each other. And it's primarily for those reasons that I'm going to give this one to the movie.
All right. There you go. Katie, What's next?
Well, like you said, we are running our March Madness bracket with a bunch of movies, all based on the legend of Robin Hood.
Yeah. Yes. So at this point, if you're listening to this when it comes out, a lot of the bracket's done, but at the very
We're
least,
half-ish way through the bracket.
yeah, at the very least,
point.
we'll be on the final four.
Yes.
So you'll still be able to vote for like the winner of the whole thing. If you're listening to this and you go join us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, you'll be able to get in there and vote for the final couple matchups, which will determine what actually wins. And then if we have not announced this, whatever is the runner up, we will be doing that as our bonus episode for the month of April.
For March.
On Patreon. So if you want to listen, whatever the runner up is, we'll be doing that as the bonus episode on Patreon. So support us for $5 on Patreon, and you can listen to that. That's going to do it for this episode. Come back in 1 week's time. We're talking about we're doing the prequel. We'll be talking about what you all had to say about The Parent Trap, previewing whichever movie of Robin Hood that we're doing, because we don't know yet, and whichever book, or not whichever book. We'll be
previewing The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood.
The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood. But until that time, guys, gals, non-binary pals, everybody else,
keep reading books,
watching movies,
and keep being awesome.